Welcome to Just One Thing for Parents. I'm Bettina Honan. When AI dropped suddenly, without warning, it felt, or any time for preparation, parents and educators had to really think quickly about how this might affect learning in schools and for kids. One big question is how to manage homework and AI. To talk about this, I was joined by Dr. Claire Badger, who is head of teacher professional development at InnerDrive. InnerDrive focuses on evidence-informed strategies to improve teaching and learning. But what makes Claire such a valuable guest is her unique blend of both academic expertise, but also real-world experience. She was a secondary school teacher herself for many years. And what Claire does in this episode is kind of break it all down for us. She talks through the research evidence that we know about and really helps parents to think about what matters when it comes to homework. And how they can support kids in using AI without cheating, but also ensuring that they're doing the important learning that they need to do. There's something in this episode for parents of all ages, also for educators or professionals navigating this whole new world of artificial intelligence and education, and particularly a focus on artificial intelligence and homework. So please have a listen to my episode with Dr. Claire Badger. So hi and welcome, Claire. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So the question for you is, what's just one thing parents should know about AI and homework?
Yeah.
And maybe you could just start by saying a little about why you chose this question.
So I chose this question because I think there's kind of two extreme versions of this that I think a lot of parents hold. I think there's one aspect that is like, oh my God, AI is just dreadful. It's going to ruin education. Loads and loads of fears around sort of plagiarism and cheating and things like that. And then I think at the other end, there's a lot of parents who are probably using a lot of AI in their work and they can see how useful it is to them in their work. And then they're thinking, well, obviously our children should be using AI for their schoolwork because that's what they'll be doing in the future. So I think we've got those sort of two quite extreme views, and what I think is there's a kind of middle ground on that, and actually understanding a little bit about kind of learning and why we set homework and stuff helps us to kind of navigate those two kind of extremes. So that's why I chose the question. I think it's a really pertinent, interesting one and a tricky one for parents and teachers.
I agree with you. And it kind of almost came out of the blue a bit, didn't it?
Yeah.
It was from one week to the next, there was this AI thing. And
Yeah, suddenly like Chat GPT was just like launched on the world in like
yeah,
November 22 or 23 or whatever it was, and everyone was sort of scrabbling to know what to do there.
yeah,
We've got some clearer guidance now, I think,
yeah.
and some good research that on
Okay,
it.
it's going to be
Yeah.
so helpful for parents, I think, to hear. Is there an argument that we should just ban it, AI for students, or are some teachers and schools doing that?
I think some are. I think the main problem with banning AI is that then you have to have a way of policing that. So essentially, if you ban AI, you've got to then be able to say this bit of homework has been done using AI. And there's two ways that you might be able to detect that AI use. You can either detect it using AI, or you can use teachers to detect whether that AI is being used. So a couple of bits of research that I can talk about here. First of all, on the sort of AI detection research, there's one paper where they looked at, I think, 12 different AI detection systems. Turnitin was one of them. That's a really commonly used one. And they found that on average for all of those AI detection systems, it was only about 68% accurate. And
Right.
that's a pretty rubbish number. I think the best one came in about 80% accurate. And that's a really rubbish detection rate. And it got it wrong both ways round, as it were. So it missed some AI produced work.
Hmm.
So that means that, some students would have cheated using AI and they would have got away with it. So that's not great. But I think for me, the worst one is it actually misattributed a student bit of work as AI. And I think if we're talking about kind of teacher-student relationships, that's really damaging for you as a student to have put in loads and loads of work into
Yes.
something and loads of effort, and then for your teacher to accuse you of cheating, essentially using AI. I think that's horrible, and I think those teacher-student relationships could be really damaged. And then the researchers in this particular paper were their sort of quote was that it's like AI detection is neither accurate nor reliable. So they were pretty
Right.
damning of those things.
Do you
And
know
you know,
what? Just a little story on that. I do remember
yeah,
way before AI, when my son wasn't very academic when he was younger, and I remember, to my shame, he wrote this piece, and it was so great. And my husband and I said he didn't write that, and we accused him of not writing it,
yeah,
which was so terrible, and he looked so horrified.
yeah.
You're absolutely right.
And I think that to my mind is the worst bit of it. Also, in the research they looked at, it's more likely to accuse English as an additional language. It's more likely to
Oh,
reckon it's AI. So there's some sort of inclusion
right.
issues there as well. So I think ultimately those AI detection tools, even if they get better, and
Yeah,
I've seen some that claim to be 90%, I'm pretty skeptical about whether they're 90% accurate, but they're still 10% inaccurate. And that's a major problem if we're going to use this as a detection thing. Um, so if we can't use AI, then maybe we can use human people to detect. And again, they've done some research on this where they had 200 teachers looking at a mixture of like AI work and student work. And within that, I think it was like a 38% accuracy detection rate. So when they
oh,
looked at yeah, so for the AI work, they only correctly assigned that as being AI 38% of the time. So that's really low.
even
Um,
worse.
yeah, exactly. Often when I talk to teachers about this, they're just like, oh, but I know my students, or, as parents, you'd be, oh, but I know my son, daughter, I know the sort of stuff they do, and therefore I'd be able to tell because they know them. And actually, that's still a massive leap to make from like 38% to 100%. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
anyone could make that big leap. And also within the research there, they asked the teachers how confident they felt they were. And there was this massive gap between how confident they were and how accurate they were. And they called that the kind of over detection confidence gap. And I think we're
Right.
all a bit guilty of that. We're all just, oh, well, maybe they're not very good at AI detection, but I'm really good at it. I can definitely tell. And I'm pretty sure that isn't possible. So, I mean, one of the things I used to talk to teachers at school when I was still teaching is that okay, so maybe when AI first came out, when it was first launched into the world, then yeah, maybe you'd known those students for ages without AI. Maybe then you could tell. But now AI's been around for 2 years. It's freely accessible. We know students are using it. Like if you start a new class, you've never taught them before, you don't know. And if they've always been using AI, you don't know that student.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think we are therefore left with a conundrum,
Yeah.
really. And I think therefore that this banning and therefore hoping to catch people using it, you're not going to be able to. So I think that's a non-starter, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can really see that. But I can also see that there's a dilemma because if you gave
Mm,
us homework, go and write, you know, discuss, I don't know, something about the start of World War II. You just put that in AI, give me 1,000 words, they'd give you a pretty good answer.
yeah, and it is really good now, and students are using it. So I remember playing around with it. So I'm a science teacher by background. I remember playing around with it a couple of years ago about some quite hard science that I was teaching my upper six, year 13 students. And it gave me a paragraph, which was all a bit waffly, and there was mistakes in there. And at that stage, I, as an expert teacher, understood it, could pick out the mistakes. So my concern there was that the students wouldn't be able to actually pick out the errors and they'd get really confused by it. But I tried exactly the same topic a few weeks ago and it was spot on. Like it was really
Oh,
accurate. It can do chemical equations. It was a really clear summary. It put bullet points in. It was kind of better than a lot of textbooks, to be
mhm.
honest.
Wow.
It can do, and you don't even need to type in the question. You can just like scan in what the exam question is or scan in what your teacher's given you. It
Mm.
will analyze kind of maths questions as well, so you can give it like an image and it'll analyze it. It is pretty good now. So I think that idea that if you ask an AI, it's just going to come up with something rubbish, it's
Mm.
true.
Yeah, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
husband would always say to me, "Remember when the internet first came out?" I remember
yeah,
somebody showing me this thing called the World Wide Web, and
yeah,
me going, "Oh my God, that's so slow. That's never
yeah.
going to catch
That's
on."
never going to catch on, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always the quote with large language models that the current LLMs are the worst we'll ever see. from that.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
yeah, yeah.
quite an interesting way of thinking about it. So they are
So
getting better and
what are we
better.
going to do? What are we going to do? It feels like such a dilemma. How are kids ever going to learn? How can we expect them ever to really learn how to write an essay or, yeah,
Yeah. And I think so sometimes I hear kind of comments about, well, if you are setting homework that an AI can do, which,
yeah,
most homework an AI can do, then you're setting the wrong sort of homeworks.
yes,
You need to be setting something that an AI can't do. So something that's testing like creativity or critical thinking, and we need to be doing this. And I think the problem there is it sort of misses a bit of the point about homework. And I think this is what happens for, maybe some parents who are using AI a lot in their work, and they can see they're interacting with it, and it's sort of they're working alongside the AI. It's like a co-intelligence is the word I've seen used. But of course, they're experts in their field, and students are learning. And I think that big distinction about what is the point of homework, I think is really important to get across. Um, because we need to build up that knowledge and that expertise to be
yeah.
creative, to be critical thinkers. You need to know stuff. And in order to kind of do that, there's a brilliant quote in the research called "Memory is the residue of thought," which I really love. It's by a cognitive scientist called Daniel Willingham. And the idea there is like, in order to remember stuff, you need to think hard about it. And I think that's so important for students because they're learning, because they're novices, they need to build up that knowledge. And we've had, problems with this with outsource. The phrase I use is sort of outsourcing the hard thinking. And we've had problems with this for ages, ever since Google came along, I've had kids who've just cut and pasted stuff from Wikipedia and hand it in. So it's not a new thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really fundamental point that I think about, that sort of learning, that it is about doing the hard thinking. And if all you're doing as a student is just pushing that onto an AI, then you might get the right answer, but
Mm.
you've no sense of how you got there or why, and you're not building that knowledge base. So that's the sort of distinction between how maybe experts and parents in their world of work are using things as opposed to how we need to think about how AI can be used with students.
Right. So we're saying don't ban it.
Yeah,
And we're saying that it's not about changing the homework.
yeah, because there is some real value in that homework. You
Yeah.
don't set a kid an essay on Macbeth because you think they're going to produce the most amazing analytical essay of Macbeth anyway. Like that's not the point. It's the
Right.
product of that that's important. It's the thought processes
The
that they go
process
through.
of going
And
through.
that I think is the really key bit that's sometimes missing in some of these discussions, and forgetting that you as an expert in your world of work are not in that process of learning.
Yeah.
Like children are novices, I think is one of the best ways to think
Mm.
about that. So yeah.
So how can we use AI then?
So I think there are a few things it's really, really good at. But some things we need to be a bit careful of. So there's a lot of talk out there about using AI as a tutor. So, and a sort of personalized learning and things like that. There's some commercial platforms that do that. Khan Amigo from
Oh
the Khan
yeah.
Academy is quite a famous one. And I think these have got some potential, but I think we need to be a little bit careful. And there's a really good.
Just yeah,
Yeah.
just say how that works.
Oh, so basically, the idea is that you, as a student, would be interacting with an AI and asking questions as you're doing your work, and
Wow.
therefore it's helping you to do the work. It's not like, here's my question, give me the answer. It should be a bit more like helping. And quite a lot of these platforms have like AI tutors that you can kind of go and do that with. Certainly, that's how Khan Amigo is sort of set up. Um, so I think there's some potential there, but there's a really good bit of research that was published just recently that where they did a randomized control trial. They had a group of students who were allowed to use AI to help with the work, and then they had a group that weren't. And the group that were allowed to use the AI in the sort of learning phase and answering the questions in the learning phase, they did much, much better. So they got much more of the questions right in that learning phase. But then when they did the final assessment, it was the reverse. Like the drop in knowledge from the students that used the AI, they did well initially, but then the performance dropped off, and actually the performance of the controlled group stayed about the same. So they retained more information.
Right.
And I think that's the real worry about if you are allowing this sort of tutoring,
Mm,
like what sort of questions are they asking and what sort of information they're getting back?
mm.
Because when they then looked at the sorts of questions that the students were asking, like I think it was like a third of it was just like, tell me the answer. So
Okay.
often it was just like, tell me the answer
Yeah.
rather than, can you help me? Which was down more like 11% or something. So that's the issue that it's just a bit too tempting to just say, give me the answer.
Yeah.
But I think, I think that can be this case with like human tutors as well, like bad human
Yeah.
tutors just
Yeah.
tell you the answer. So I think I was always quite anti students that I taught having tutors because I was really worried that it would give that sort of short-term boost, but not long-term learning.
Rather than the tutor kind of scaffolding and getting them to do the thinking. But presumably
Yeah.
the AI tutors could develop over time.
Yeah, there is I think the bit of research that I thought was the most interesting one, and this is quite recent, was the idea of the AI alongside a human tutor to save the human tutor. So this again is online platforms, but it was, traditionally like a human being would like respond to the students' questions. And there's research to show that having an AI to give a few suggested questions to start with, and then the human to pick the right one, that is
Mm.
better than just having human tutors, particularly for inexperienced tutors. So it's a way of kind of quickly upskilling not so good tutors who might be a bit too focused on giving the right answer to actually ask some more challenging questions about, have you thought about this? Oh, go back to line 2 and look at this. Actually, you need to go back to this theory or whatever it is. So I think
So the
there's
AI is
potential there.
helping the teacher tutor more
Exactly. So the
than
AI is giving some
scaffold.
suggestions. So
Yeah.
you're not, as the human being, having to scrabble around for the right prompt, like it's giving you some suggested questions. So that's it. That's a potential way forward. But again, it is just a bit too easy to get AI to do the work for you. And I was saying earlier with students, that is, that cognitive offloading, outsourcing hard
Yes.
thinking, whatever you want to call it, that means that they're just not going to retain as much.
Yeah.
And that's a problem long term, even if short term, it looks like they're doing really, really well.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's really tough. It was something I was listening to the other day where they were chatting about the fact that the whole problem with this is the way that an AI is set up. Its whole raison d'etre, if you like, is to give you products quickly.
Yes.
But to try and get it to help you with the process, you're almost going against the way that the LLMs are designed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, that's hard enough as adults. And you know better than me the quirks of the teenage brain.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
get a teenager who's got all of those different emotional things going on, then that is really hard.
Yeah. Particularly with a slight focus on grades and outcome rather than process in our education system.
Exactly,
I hardly
exactly.
blame them.
No, no. And, to be honest, if I was back at the age of 15, and I was coming up to a deadline and, I was tired and stressed and I had other things going on and I was 99% sure no one would guess. Yeah,
Mm.
I would totally go on
Yeah.
to an
Yeah.
AI
Yeah.
to do it for me. Like, and there is research suggests that is why students are using AI. If you think your children aren't, I'm afraid you're probably a little bit naive there. They are definitely using it. They're using it regularly. Um, and a lot of the reasons they use it are exactly that. It's high workload and it's feeling the pressure.
Mm.
So I think if there's anything parents can do when it's, low stakes homework to try and reduce that pressure, to not kind of praise students for getting really, really high marks. So, and asking them about, I always used to say as a teacher when I was at school, don't ask about the grades. Ask about what they learned from doing that thing. Try and focus your questioning as a parent
Yeah.
on that process. And I think that will go some way to mitigating it.
Mm.
But it's not easy, that's for certain.
So do you think kids shouldn't be using it for their homework?
No, I think there are ways in which I think you need to have conversations because I think they will use it.
Yes.
And I think it can be used for some really good things. I think, if you're completely stuck, like if you're having that sort of brain freeze moment when you can't start a bit of work,
Yeah.
and if you say, could you just give me a couple of ideas? Like AI is brilliant at some of that divergent thinking, giving you a different perspective, starting you off
Yeah.
with something. And if that's just that little bit to get you going, I think that could be really good. I think, that complex chemistry one I was talking about earlier, that explanation was better than a textbook explanation. So
Wow.
if you just, there's some really bad textbooks out there, unfortunately. But if you therefore are using it in a way that's just like, I really don't get this. It was really hard. I tried to listen in class, but it was complicated. I just want a different way of viewing it. Now, if you're using it that way and you're not just then handing that in as an answer to the question and fooling yourself that you understand it, then
Mhm.
that's not a bad thing to do. And I think a lot of students are doing that. It's then you'd need to do like, the retrieval practice and checking you can actually write it in your own words and things like that afterwards. But if the AI is helping you because you literally didn't get it in class, then I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
So it's that sort of it's working with the students to understand why they're doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it's those conversations about
Mm.
it and just that real caution, like, and having conversations like, why do you think your teacher's setting you homework?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Your teacher loves you, I'm sure, but they're not actually that bothered about the
Yeah.
product. And if you had, and I always used to have this same conversation about anything, if you hand me in some work that you and your mate did together, then I'm going to think that you understood it, whereas actually you don't understand it at all. It's your mate that understands it. And that's not helpful information for me. So I think, parents, teachers just need to be having those honest conversations about the purpose of it. And I want to know what you do and do not understand so I can help you get better. And if you
Yeah.
have something that you've told me is your own work and it's not, then I'm going to assume you know it and you don't, and then I can't help you.
Yeah. And some kids won't care about that, but some kids will. I have seen, sorry, but
Yeah,
I have seen in some academic papers it will almost be a
yeah.
declaration when they're saying I used AI for this and I used AI for
Yeah.
that. Is that happening sometimes? Like teachers might say
Yeah,
to me,
absolutely.
yeah,
There's certain things, and I think, as I said, I think that coming up with ideas, that a bit of a brainstorming session, I think those are really good. Certainly longer projects. When we were doing extended project qualifications, I think one really great way that you could start things. So that's when students need to do a big project, which involves a lot of research, and
mm,
they often don't really know where to start with that. It's the first time they've ever done anything like that. It ends up with a 5,000 word essay or something. Um, and I said, well, you know what? That research can be really difficult to understand. There's a lot to read. One thing you could do is just ask the AI to give you a summary. So you got 20 things that you're not sure are going to be helpful. Ask the AI to give you a summary. From that summary, you can then go, oh, these three papers seem useful and interesting,
mm,
and I can discard those ones without reading the whole lot. And now I'm going to go and read those ones in detail.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that is a really helpful way to use AI to kind of summarize some really complex stuff. But you then must go and read the papers yourself. You can't rely
yeah,
on AI summary. And that again is a tricky thing for some students to do
yeah,
to manage.
yeah,
What other ones are, and I think, then explaining that that's what you did. I used an AI to help me narrow my searches down.
yeah.
That's fine. And within the EPQ, there's a kind of a log where you can write down things. If you use the AI to actually write the essay itself,
Mm,
then that's obviously not
yeah,
acceptable. But
yeah.
then who's going to know how to
Yeah, that's the thing. But I did
problem?
see in a paper somebody said I used AI to help me to make sure that language was clear or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And to what
You're still
extent?
doing the thinking, aren't you? You're
Yeah,
still
yeah,
going
yeah.
through the process, which is what you're saying is the important thing.
Yeah, and that thinking process is important. I mean, there are some people that would argue that actually writing it and writing it well is part of the thinking
Yeah.
process. So I think that one's a bit tricky. But I would say to teachers at school, some teachers struggle to write like emails to parents and stuff. They weren't quite sure how to phrase it.
Mm.
Fine, get an AI to help you with that. That seems a perfectly reasonable if it's language that you're worried about, and
Mm.
that's not something certainly that I would want teachers spending a lot of time
No,
on
quite.
crafting, carefully worded emails. Like if that is something you struggle with, I had, teachers whose first language wasn't English. Yeah, great, give it to an AI.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But to what extent you want students doing that, I think that one's potentially tricky because again, you're wanting to help them get better at writing language, and you can
Yeah.
do that by doing the process yourself.
So,
The novice expert thing, I think, is quite a good way to think about it.
yeah. Oh, Claire, thank you so much for this.
That's all right.
I mean, is there anything else you wanted to say that we haven't covered?
Yeah, so my sort of one thing which I hope has come across is just to make sure that as parents you're having those discussions about the process of thinking that your children are going through rather than that focus on product. I think that's the sort of key thing. Um, and also, if anyone wants to find out more about any of this stuff, so my company, InnerDrive, we do work with parents. So we have a book that we've written. My colleagues, Bradley Bush and Edward Watson, have written a book called A Parent's Guide to the Science of Learning, which kind of summarizes some of the scientific studies. Nothing specific on AI because it was published a while ago, but some of this idea that, you need to be thinking hard in order to remember stuff. Those sorts of ideas come through there. We also run workshops for parents as well. So if anyone's interested in that, then do just get in touch with the school. And usually it's a school that books us to the parent workshops. But we've done lots of workshops on technology and using technology. Mobile phones is a big thing at the moment. We've certainly done lots of work on that. So
Yeah.
yeah, do get in touch.
Yeah, wonderful. I might have to get you back to talk about mobile phones in school.
Oh yeah, there's a whole extra bit on that, definitely.
Yeah.
There's
But
pretty
I think
strong evidence about it now.
is there that they
Yeah,
shouldn't be there, presumably.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Do you know what I think is so valuable is all the experience you have as a teacher and how applied it is. So
yeah,
you're really reading the research and saying, how does this apply in
yeah,
the real world? And that's
yeah.
just so valuable. So thank you so much for coming
No
on.
worries. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.